The cantina on Nexus Prime was always busy, but tonight it felt different. The lights were dim, and the air was thick with smoke from a dozen different alien species. In the far corner, away from the noise and crowds, sat two figures at a small, metal table. Commander Zexthera looked nothing like the proud warrior he once was. His blue skin had turned pale gray, and his forearms shook as he lifted his drink. Across from him sat Captain Jake Morrison, human diplomat who had come to discuss trade deals between Earth and the Galactic Coalition. Jake studied the alien commander with concern. They had been talking for 2 hours about shipping routes and cargo prices, but something was wrong. Zexthera kept staring into his drink and muttering words in his native language. "Commander, are you feeling well?" Jake asked. "We can finish this meeting another time if you need to rest." His large black eyes looked up and met Jake's brown ones. For a moment, the alien said nothing. Then he spoke in a voice so quiet that Jake had to lean forward to hear him. "You humans," Zexthera whispered. "You have no idea what you are, do you?" Jake frowned. "I'm sorry. What do you mean?" "The war," Zexthera said, his voice getting stronger. "The war between your people and mine. It ended 3 years ago, but I still have nightmares about it." Jake nodded slowly. He knew about the Terran Coalition War, of course. It had been a short but brutal conflict that ended when both sides agreed to stop fighting. The peace treaty had been signed quickly, and most humans thought it was because the Coalition realized Earth was too strong to defeat. "Yes, I remember the war," Jake said carefully. "But that's behind us now. We're here to build a better future between our peoples." Zexthera let out a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and bitter. "A better future. Yes, that's what we tell ourselves. But do you know why the war really ended, Captain Morrison?" "Because both sides wanted peace," Jake replied, though he was starting to feel uneasy. "No," Zexthera said, shaking his head. "The war ended because we learned what you humans really are. And once we knew the truth, continuing the war would have destroyed us all." Jake set down his own drink and leaned back in his chair. "Commander, I think you've had too much to drink. Maybe we should call it a night." But Zexthera grabbed Jake's wrist with one of his 4 hands. His grip was surprisingly strong for someone who looked so weak. "Listen to me," the alien commander said urgently. "I was there. I saw what your people did, what Captain Lisa Hayes and her crew did on the ship called Defiance. I watched it happen, and I still can't believe it was real." Jake tried to pull his hand free, but Zexthera held on tight. "You're hurting me, Commander." "Good," Zexthera said. "Pain is something I understand. It's simple. It makes sense. But what you humans do with pain, with death, with hopeless situations, that doesn't make sense to anyone else in the galaxy." He released Jake's wrist and took another drink. His hands were shaking again. "When the war started," Zexthera continued, "we thought it would be easy. Humans were new to space travel. Your ships were small and weak compared to ours. Your technology was primitive. We had fought and defeated dozens of species across the galaxy. Should have been just another conquest." Jake rubbed his wrist, where the alien had grabbed him, but we weren't. "No, you weren't." Zexthera's voice dropped to almost a whisper again. "At first it went as expected. We destroyed your outer colonies, crushed your first fleets. Your people died by the end. Millions. Any sane species would have surrendered after the first month. But humans didn't surrender. That was our first mistake," Zexthera said. "We thought your leaders were just stubborn. We thought if we killed enough of you, the rest would give up. We had no idea that killing humans only made the survivors fight harder." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in the alien's voice that scared him. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was fear. Pure, raw terror. "What happened at the Battle of Kepler?" Jake asked. He knew something important had happened there. But the military records were still classified. Zexthera closed his eyes and was quiet. For a long moment, when he opened them again, they were wet with what Jake assumed were tears. "That's where I learned the truth," the commander said. "That's where I saw what humans really are. We had your Captain Hayes trapped. Her ship was damaged beyond repair. Her crew was dying. She had no weapons left and no chance of escape, so she surrendered. "No," Zexthera said, and his voice cracked. She smiled. She actually smiled and told her crew that now they were free to fight without worrying about going home. Jake felt his heart start beating faster. What does that mean? It means that when humans have nothing left to lose, they become something else. Something that no other species in the galaxy can understand or fight against. Zexthera finished his drink and gestured for another one. The server, a tall, insect-like creature, brought it quickly and moved away without making eye contact. "After Kepler, our scientists started studying your people," the commander continued. "They wanted to understand how you fought so well when you should have been defeated. What they found changed everything." "What did they find?" Zexthera looked around the cantina nervously, as if he was afraid someone might be listening. Then he leaned closer to Jake. "They found out that humans are the only intelligent species in the galaxy that evolved from both hunters and prey animals. Every other race came from either predators or prey, but never both. Do you understand what that means?" Jake shook his head. "Not really." "It means that you have the mind of a hunter and the desperation of prey at the same time. When you're cornered, you don't just fight back. You become something that shouldn't exist. Something that turns its own death into a weapon." The cantina suddenly felt very cold to Jake. "Commander, you're scaring me." "Good," Zexthera said. "You should be scared. Because if your own people knew what they really were, what they were capable of, they would scare themselves too." Jake stood up from the table. "I think this meeting is over." But as he turned to leave, Zexthera called out to him one last time. "Captain Morrison, the war didn't end because we couldn't defeat you. It ended because we realized that defeating you would have been worse than losing to you." Jake stopped walking but didn't turn around. "Think about that," Zexthera said quietly. "And when you do, you'll understand why the entire galaxy is afraid of what humans might become." Jake Morrison sat back down at the table. His hands were shaking now too, but not from drink like the alien commander. He was shaking from fear and curiosity. Something about Zexthera's words made him need to know more. "Tell me about Kepler," Jake said quietly. "Tell me what really happened there." Zexthera stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and began to speak. "It was supposed to be a simple cleanup mission," the commander said. "Your human fleet was running away from our main force. They were badly damaged and low on supplies. We had been chasing them for 3 days through space." He paused to take another drink, his 4 hands wrapped around the glass like he was holding onto it for safety. "There were 12 human ships left," Zexthera continued, "small ones mostly. The biggest was Captain Hayes' ship, the Defiance. We had 60 ships in our fleet, big ones with heavy weapons and thick armor. The humans had nowhere to run and no chance to win." Jake listened carefully. He could picture the scene in his mind. A small group of human ships, alone in the darkness of space, surrounded by enemies. "We sent them a message," Zexthera said. "Standard procedure. We told them to surrender, and we would treat them well as prisoners. Most species accept this offer when they have no other choice. But the humans didn't. No, Captain Hayes herself answered our message. She was a small woman with short brown hair and green eyes. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. Her uniform was torn and there was blood on her face." Zexthera's voice became quieter as he remembered. "She looked directly into the camera when she spoke to us. Her voice was calm, like she was talking about the weather. She said her engines were broken beyond fixing. She said half her crew was wounded or dead. She said they had no ammunition left for their big guns." Jake felt his heart beating faster. "What else did she say?" "She smiled," Zexthera whispered. "Right there on the screen with her ship falling apart around her, she smiled like she had just heard good news. Then she said the words that still give me nightmares." The alien commander stopped talking and stared into his drink. Jake waited, but Zexthera seemed lost in his memories. "What did she say?" "She said, 'Good. Now we can fight without worrying about getting home.'" Jake felt cold all over. What did that mean? "It meant that your captain had just turned her entire fleet into weapons," Zexthera said. "Ships that were trying to survive. became ships that were trying to kill as many of us as possible before they died. The commander took another drink and continued his story. The battle started 30 seconds later. But it wasn't like any battle I had ever seen before. Your ships didn't try to protect themselves. They didn't try to run away. They came straight at us like missiles. Jake could see the fear growing in the alien's eyes as he remembered. The first human ship to attack us was barely working. Its engines were smoking and its hull was cracked open. Any normal crew would have used it to escape in the small emergency pods. Instead, they aimed it at our biggest ship and flew it straight into our engines. A suicide attack, Jake said quietly. Yes, but that's not the worst part, Zexthera said. The worst part was that right before impact, the crew got into their escape pods and launched them. But they didn't try to get away from the battle. They used the pods to attack our rescue ships. Jake stared at the alien commander. They turned their own rescue into another attack. Exactly. And while this was happening, Captain Hayes was giving orders to her other ships, but her orders didn't make sense to us. She told one damaged ship to ram our supply vessel. She told another ship with no weapons to crash into our communications array. Zexthera's 4 hands were shaking badly now. Every human ship that was about to be destroyed became a guided missile. Every crew that was about to die became a group of fighters who had nothing left to lose. It was like fighting against people who were already dead but didn't know it yet. Jake tried to imagine what that battle must have looked like. Human ships, turning their own destruction into weapons against the enemy. How many coalition ships did you lose? He asked. 17, Zexthera said. 17 ships destroyed or badly damaged by 12 human ships that were already beaten. Battle, but it felt like losing. What happened to Captain Hayes? She saved her ship for last, the commander said. While her other ships were attacking us, she was getting the Defiance ready for something special. She had her crew take apart everything that could explode and put it all in one place. Jake felt sick to his stomach. A bomb. The biggest bomb I've ever seen a ship carry, Zexthera said. She flew the Defiance straight at our command ship. Our weapons hit her over and over, but she kept coming. Right before she reached us, her crew got into escape pods and launched them. Did they try to get away? No. The pods landed on our ship's hull and the crew came out wearing space suits and carrying tools. They started cutting holes in our armor while their captain crashed her ship into our engines. Zexthera was quiet for a moment, lost in the terrible memory. Captain Hayes died when the Defiance exploded, he continued. But her crew lived long enough to plant bombs inside our ship. We had to abandon our command vessel 30 minutes later. Jake sat back in his chair, trying to process what he had heard. The battle was over after 4 hours, Zexthera said. We had won. The human fleet was completely destroyed. But we had lost more ships than we had in the previous 6 months of fighting. That's when you realized humans were different, Zexthera said, shaking his head. That's when we realized humans were something we had never seen before. Something that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. The alien commander finished his drink and looked directly at Jake. After the battle, we picked up the surviving human crew members from the escape pods. We thought they would be broken and sad, like any normal people would be after watching their friends die. But they weren't. No, Zexthera whispered. They were proud. They were happy. They acted like they had won the battle instead of losing it. That's when our scientists knew they had to study your species more carefully. Jake felt a chill run through his body. What did they find? Zexthera ordered another drink before continuing his story. The cantina had grown quieter as the night went on, but Jake barely noticed. He was too focused on the alien commander's words. After the Battle of Kepler, our high command called an emergency meeting, Zexthera said. They brought in our best scientists to study what had happened. The leader of the research team was Dr. Vorthan, the smartest being I've ever met. Jake leaned forward. What kind of research? They wanted to understand how humans could fight the way they did, the commander explained. Dr. Vorthan studied videos of the battle over and over. He also talked to the human prisoners we had captured during the war. Zexthera paused too. Drink then continued. The doctor spent 3 months doing his research. When he was ready to present his findings to the High Command, they called me to attend the meeting. I was there because I had seen the battle with my own eyes. Jake felt his hands getting sweaty. Something about the way Zexthera spoke made him nervous. The meeting was held in our most secure facility, the commander said. Only the highest-ranking officers were allowed to attend. Dr. Vorthen came in carrying a thick folder full of papers and data files. What did he find? Zexthera looked around the cantina nervously before answering. He found that humans are impossible, the alien said quietly. According to everything we know about how intelligent life develops, your species should not exist. Jake frowned. What do you mean? Dr. Vorthon explained it to us like this. Zexthera said, every intelligent species in the galaxy evolved from either hunters or prey animals. Never both. My people evolved from creatures that hunted other animals for food. Your friends, the Centauri, evolved from plant eaters that had to run and hide. From predators. The commander used his 4 hands to gesture as he spoke. Hunter species think like predators, he continued. They plan attacks. They work together in groups. They are patient and smart. But they avoid unnecessary risks because getting hurt makes it harder to hunt. That makes sense, Jake said. Prey species think differently, Zexthera explained. They are always watching for danger. They run away from fights. They only become violent when they have no other choice. But when they do fight, they fight with desperation. Jake was starting to understand, and humans are different. Yes, Dr. Vorthen discovered that humans evolved from creatures that were both hunters and prey at the same time. Your ancient ancestors hunted other animals, but they were also hunted by bigger predators. Zexthera's voice became more excited. As he explained the science, he's created something that has never existed anywhere else in the galaxy, he said. Humans have the planning ability and teamwork of hunter species, combined with the desperate fighting spirit of prey species. We're both at the same time. Exactly. And that combination creates behaviors that no other species can predict or understand. The alien commander took another drink before continuing. Dr. Vorthan showed us brain scans of human prisoners during stressful situations. When humans face danger, their brains release chemicals that would kill most other species. These chemicals make humans stronger, faster, and less afraid of pain. Jake touched his own head unconsciously. We all have that. Every human, Zexthera confirmed. But that's not the scariest part. The doctor also discovered that human social bonds are much stronger than in other species. When one human dies, it makes the others fight harder instead of making them want to give up. We protect each other. More than that, Dr. Vorthan found that humans will die for complete strangers if they believe it's the right thing to do. This is insanity to every other species in the galaxy. Zexthera's hands were shaking again as he remembered the briefing. The doctor showed us videos of human prisoners, he said. When we captured other species during wars, they would tell us anything we wanted to know to save their own lives. But human prisoners were different. How? They wouldn't talk, even when we threatened to kill them. But that's not the strange part. The strange part was that they used the time we spent questioning them to study us instead. Jake felt a chill. They were gathering intelligence. Yes, every human prisoner was secretly learning about our ships, our weapons, our weaknesses. Some of them even escaped and used what they learned to attack us later. The commander shook his head in amazement. Dr. Vorthan said that humans seem to understand something that no other species understands, he continued. They know that they are going to die eventually anyway, so they are not afraid of dying for something important. We accept that death is part of life. But you do more than accept it, Zexthera said. You use it. You turn your own mortality into a weapon against your enemies. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about what the alien had said. The doctor presented more evidence, Zexthera continued. He showed us reports from coalition soldiers who had spent time guarding human prisoners. These soldiers started acting strangely after a few weeks. Strangely how? They began taking unnecessary risks during battles. They started forming closer friendships with their fellow soldiers. Most disturbing of all, they became less afraid of death. Jake stared at the alien commander. The humans were influencing your soldiers? Not on purpose, Zexthera said. Just being around humans for long periods seemed to change how our people thought and acted. Dr. Vorthan called it behavioral contamination. That sounds scary. It was terrifying, the commander confirmed. The doctor warned that prolonged contact with humans could cause other species to start thinking like humans. And if that happened, it would spread through our military like a disease. Zexthera finished his drink and gestured for another one. But the most frightening discovery came at the end of Dr. Vorthan's presentation, he said. He had studied human history from the information we captured from your computer systems. What did he find? He found that humans have been at war with each other for thousands of years. But instead of making you weaker, all that fighting made you stronger. Every war taught you new ways to kill and new ways to survive. The alien's voice dropped to a whisper. Dr. Vorthan calculated that humans have spent more time fighting wars than any other species in the galaxy. And unlike other species, you never fight the same way twice. You constantly change and improve your methods. Jake felt sick to his stomach. We're a species bred for war. Yes, Zexthera said. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what Dr. Vorthan predicted would happen if the war continued. What did he predict? Zexthera looked directly into Jake's eyes with an expression of pure terror. He said that fighting humans would eventually turn the entire coalition military into something just like you. Jake Morrison felt his heart pounding as he stared at the alien commander. The cantina had become almost empty now, with only a few late-night drinkers scattered around the dark room. But Jake barely noticed anything except Zexthera's terrified face. Tell me what Dr. Vorthan predicted, Jake said quietly. Tell me what would have happened if the war continued. Zexthera took a long drink before answering. His forehands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the glass. The doctor said that humans don't conquer other species the way everyone else does, the commander began. Most species conquer through force. They destroy the enemy's military and take control of their planets. But humans are different. How? Are we different? You conquer by example, Zexthera said. Just by being around humans, other species start to change. They start to think like you. They start to act like you. And once that happens, they become something new. Jake felt cold all over. What do you mean by something new? Dr. Vorthan showed us reports from our occupation forces, the commander explained. When we captured human colonies, we left soldiers behind to control the populations. But strange things started happening to those soldiers. Zexthera paused to collect his thoughts, then continued. At first, the reports seemed normal. The human civilians were cooperating with our forces. There were no major uprisings or attacks. Our commanders thought the occupation was going well, but it wasn't. No. After a few months, our soldiers started sending different kinds of reports. Talked about how brave the human civilians were, how they helped each other during difficult times, how they never gave up hope, even when things looked impossible. The alien's voice became quieter as he remembered. Then our soldiers started acting differently themselves. They began taking extra risks to protect the human civilians. They formed friendships with the people they were supposed to be controlling. Some of them even started learning human languages and customs. Jake listened carefully, trying to understand what this meant. The worst reports came from the prison camps where we kept human soldiers. Zexthera continued. Our guards were supposed to keep the prisoners under control and gather information from them. But instead, the guards started admiring the prisoners. Admiring them how? They were impressed by how the human prisoners looked after each other, how they shared their small amounts of food, how they refused to betray their friends even under torture. Our guards had never seen loyalty like that before. Zexthera took another drink, his hands still shaking. Within 6 months, many of our occupation forces were no longer following orders properly. They were making decisions based on what they thought was right instead of what their commanders told them to do. Jake felt a strange mix of pride and fear. They were becoming more human. Exactly. And Dr. Vorthan realized that this was not an accident. It was how humans had always spread their influence throughout history. The commander leaned forward across the table. The doctor studied your planet's history very carefully, he said. He found that every time humans encountered other groups of humans with different ways of thinking, the same thing happened. Happened? The groups that spent time with humans started adopting human values. Ideas about individual freedom, about protecting the weak, about never giving up in the face of impossible odds. These ideas spread like a virus. Zixthera's voice became more urgent as he spoke. Dr. Vorthon calculated that if the war had continued for another year, at least 30% of our military would have been thinking like humans. In 2 years, it would have been 60%. Jake stared at the alien commander. Your entire military would have become human-like. Yes, and once that happened, the coalition would have split apart. Our soldiers would have started questioning orders they thought were wrong. It would have formed personal bonds that were stronger than their duty to command. They would have started taking risks to protect civilians instead of just following military objectives. The cantina felt very quiet now. Jake could hear his own breathing. But that's not the most terrifying part, Zixthera whispered. There's more? Dr. Vorthan discovered that this has happened before. He found records of 3 other species that fought long wars against humans in the past. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. What happened to those species? They still exist, the commander said, but they're not the same anymore. They all developed human-like cultures. They all started valuing individual life over group survival. They all became impossible for their original governments to control. Zixthera finished his drink and set the empty glass down with a loud sound. The doctor presented his final conclusion. To the High Command, he continued. He said that humans were not just another enemy to be defeated. They were an evolutionary weapon that transformed everything they touched. A weapon, think about it, Zixthera said. Humans don't need to win battles to conquer other species, just need to exist around them long enough. Eventually, everyone starts thinking that human ideas about life and death and sacrifice are normal. Jake sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by what he was hearing. Dr. Vorthan warned that victory against humans would actually be defeat, the commander continued. Because a coalition military that thought like humans would no longer be a coalition military. It would be something entirely new. So the High Command decided to end the war. They had no choice. The peace treaty wasn't signed because we respected human military strength. It was signed because we were afraid of what continued fighting would do to our own people. Zixthera looked around the cantina nervously, then leaned closer to Jake. But here's the secret that terrifies me most, he whispered. The peace treaty didn't stop the process. It only slowed it down. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Do you mean every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange between our species spreads human influence a little more? Right now, there are coalition citizens on a dozen worlds who think human ideas about individual rights and personal freedom make sense. The alien commander's voice became barely audible. Dr. Vorthan estimated that within 50 years, human thinking will have spread throughout the entire coalition. Not through war or conquest, but through simple contact and example. Jake stared at Zixthera, finally understanding the full scope of what the alien was telling him. You're saying that humans will eventually change the entire galaxy just by being ourselves. Yes, Zixthera said. And the most terrifying part is that you don't even know you're doing it. You think you're just being friendly and making allies, but really, you're transforming every species you meet into something more like yourselves. The commander stood up from the table, leaving money for his drinks. Captain Morrison, your people are the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever seen. It's not because you're violent or aggressive, but because you're infectious. You spread human nature like a disease, and there's no cure for it. As Zixthera walked away, he called back over his shoulder. The war ended because we realized that fighting you was turning us into you. But now I think it's already too late. The galaxy is becoming human, one person at a time, and nothing can stop it. Jake sat alone at the table, staring into his drink, and wondering if the alien commander was right. Outside the cantina, the future of the galaxy was being decided not by armies or weapons, but by simple human contact and the slow spread of human ideas about what life should be like.